This individual stuck with us throughout that time, and I've got to say he's kept me personally going at times of absolute despair when we thought we'd never get socialism and we'd never change society. I think we can do that now, and it's because of this man and others. Please give a great big loud welcome to John McDonald.
Ever since the newspapers denounced me as a KGB agent, and after the Sunday Times front page today, I've reverted to my natural Russian. One of the journalists, I studied a bit of Russian at university in the first year, because you did a language alongside your main studies, and I mentioned this in some interview, and one of the journalists said, "Oh, it was to read Marx, was it?" I said, "You Philistine, it was to read Tolstoy." Jeremy sends his greetings. Let me just read them to you. He phoned me this morning. We have a morning and evening telephone conversation. And when we get off the subject of the future of Arsene Wenger, let me just say this. He says, "Make greetings to Manchester, the home of such sacrifice and struggle, from Peterloo to the founding of the trade union movement. Together we can defeat austerity on the cruelty that leaves people homeless and children hungry. Unity to win for the many. Solidarity." Jeremy Corbyn. Do you just love the man? Yeah. Crap football judgment, but you love him. Let me just tell you where I think we're at the moment, because it's important, because I think putting it in the historical context, you realise the significance of the moment. It's like 150 years ago, the foundation of the movement, the Trades Councils coming together, and yes, the Labour Representation Committee to establish the Labour Party, which would go into government in due course. We're about to go into government. Yeah. I don't take any election for granted, I don't take anything for granted whatsoever. I think the spirit, the movement, the whole change of atmosphere means we're going into government. When it comes, I'm not sure. I'm a pessimist. I think the Tories will cling on to office for as long as they possibly can. But they're clinging on to office, they're not clinging on to government. They're not in government. At the moment in Parliament, virtually every day, if you ask one of the local MPs, virtually every day it's a 1 or a 2 line whip, because there's virtually no business going through Parliament. And it's because Theresa May can't form a majority, even within her own cabinet, or certainly from support from the Tory backbenchers. And then, of course, as you know, on every policy, the DUP has a veto. That's why we have a government that is in almost started absolute paralysis in government. And I think possibly by the autumn, those contradictions may well force them out of office, but we've got to work in the short term and the long term, and that's what we're doing. So we're preparing for government. We've taken the Labour manifesto, because the manifesto for the last election, it won't be for the new one. The next election will be the foundation of the policies for the next manifesto, and it'll inspire us to develop it on and radicalise it even further. So we're taking every policy now, and we're taking it into an implementation manual, and then drafting the legislation so it's on the shelf. So we're ready to hit the deck running for whenever this government collapses, and we return a Labour government. And what a dream that is now. After 150 years now, we have the potential, once again, of having a socialist going into number 10. And if he makes the right appointment, a socialist going into number 11. That was a job application. And you think back, and the point has been made really, you think back 4 years ago, 5 years ago. 4 years ago, I was just coming out of a minor heart attack, having a stent shoved up, whatever. And I was looking forward to a quiet retirement, a drift into retirement, where I'd be able to sit quietly at the back of halls like this, and moan we were in the mess because no one ever listened to me in the first place. And then along came that prospect of an election of a new leader. And you know the story. Jeremy, we forced Jeremy to run. We forced him to run. And that's the sort of leader I want. I work in what can only be described as a total institution. where large numbers of people come into that total institution with an envelope in the back of the pocket. It says, by such and such an age I'll be an MP, by such and such an age I'll be a minister, by such and such an age I'll be a Prime Minister. I never want a careerist like that as leading the Labour Party. I want someone who has I want someone who recognises this as a vocation, not a career. And that's what Jeremy Corbyn does. He recognises that actually this is the time in which we can give people hope that maybe only a few years ago many of those hopes were dashed. And the hope is so significant for so many people. We talk about the manifesto itself, and you've heard me talk about how it was constructed. It was constructed in meetings like this. The dialogue that went on for 2 years about what the needs were of our community. People turning up with their own stories of what was happening to them. People turned up and explained what the housing situation was for them and their families and their communities. And I keep repeating to people, I represent a multicultural working class constituency on the west of London. I've lived there 40 years now, that's why I've lost the accent and all the rest. Although I appear on the cop every now and again. Anyway, in my constituency tonight, it'll be the same in most towns, cities. I'll have 200 families in bed and breakfast homeless. I'll have people sleeping on the canal side, in the parks, in doorways. God help us, only 2 months ago, we had someone die only 8 feet from the entrance to Parliament, a homeless person. And that's a daily occurrence now. 5,000 people are sleeping on our streets. I'll have the worst overcrowding crisis that we've seen since the Second World War. People living in insanitary conditions and paying rents. And here's another one. I'm dealing on a weekly basis now with families living in sheds and garages rented out to them. The beds in sheds phenomenon. Why? Because we haven't built homes for 30 years. And not just not building them, we've been selling them off for 30 years as well. So when we ask people, what's the solution? They came to meetings like this, and we've had meetings this fall, they said, simple, build homes. So we said, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to build 1 million. And do you know we're going to be half of them? We're going to be proud to call them council homes. When I was born in Liverpool, my mum was a cleaner, my dad was on the docks. We lived just off Scotland Road, and I do this joke time and time again, it's true. We lived in a tenement, and now sociological studies say they're some of the worst slums in Western Europe. We just called it home. I remember when we moved out into a council prefab, but I remember better the day of celebration when we moved into a council house, Parker Morris standards, a room for my brother and myself. We had separate bedrooms for the first time, garden front and rear. It was a day of absolute celebration. We're going to give that day of celebration to the millions of people out there. Yes, we'll let councils raise the money to do that. We'll let councils raise the money to do that. And we'll make sure, through our Capital Transformation Fund, central government money goes into that as well. And we'll make sure that when we build homes, they will be truly affordable, not rip-off rents that are taking place now. But we also know it's going to take time to do that. We have to be realistic. So in the meantime, there will still be people who will be living in private rented homes. The solution for them is to give them security in those homes. But also the solution for them is to make sure that the rents that they pay are realistic. That's why we revert to a policy that did exist in our country when I was younger, and now exists across Europe as well. We're going to introduce rent controls so we control the rent. All of those promises came in the manifesto that we put in there, came from discussions like that. You know, all those people who turned up, who worked in our public services, you know, it was the junior doctors, the nurses, the ancillary workers in health, who turned up to talk about the pressure that they were under. This winter, 100,000 people treated in ambulances because they can't get into A&E units because they're backing up their patients. And a lot of that is about, you know, older people get accused of bed blocking. The reason for that is because there's 1 million people now who don't get the social care that they used to get because of the cuts that have gone on. So we just ask people, what's the solution? Is it end the cuts in the NHS? Of course they end the cuts in the NHS. Pay the workers a decent wage. A 14% cut in their wages since 2010. We've got to restore that and give them the respect again. But you know what was interesting in the discussions around the health service? All that was said, end the cuts, invest in health, make sure we get democratic control of health again, make sure people are paid properly. But above all else, end the privatisation of the NHS. That's why Jeremy said, we're going to end the privatisation of the NHS. There will be no PFIs signed under a Labour government. And you know, we're going to go further. We're going to bring them back. We're going to bring them back under democratic and public control. Why? Yes, it's because it's the right thing to do, but also because actually we will save money in doing that. We will no longer have NHS trusts and others burdened by the debt inherited from these PFI schemes. And you know, the sell-on, it is staggering. The National Audit Office did an assessment of the profits that were being made. The sell-on of shares in PFI schemes, 30% profits and above. In education, there's a number of examples where 70%, even in some of the health projects as well. We're going to end that rip-off, you know. We're going to say to Branson, Virgin Care and others, you're not going to rip us off anymore. The other is education, and education is at the heart of everything we do as a movement. When the trade union movement was founded and then the Labour Party was founded, education was seen as the way in which we could give people life chances, and by becoming more educated, you could understand the world better, and as a result of that, you would change the world. That's why education is so critical for us. And to give Tony Blair his due, when he said education, 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 he was right. I just wish he'd stuck to it and not started invading places. That would have helped. What we're going to do is we're going to set up a national education service. I said to Angie Rayner, she's going to be the Nye Bevan of the Corbyn government. Just as Nye set up the NHS, she's going to set up the NES. And the key to that is the principle that we have, a deeply held belief that education is a gift from one generation to another. It is not a commodity to be bought and sold. That's why we want to establish the principle of the NHS just the same as the NHS. So from cradle to grave, free at the point of need and delivery. And that means a massive expansion of the childcare. Looking at the Scandinavian models of levels of investment that we need to give youngsters the best start in life. And can I say also, there's an element that's gone unnoticed in recent years. A number of you have picked it up, I know. What's happened under the Tories, particularly for those kids with special needs. Just the basics. In my constituency now, you struggle to teach speech and language therapy. You struggle to get that assessment for whether your kid's on the autistic spectrum or not. And you struggle to then get the additional support. That will not happen under Labour government. We will ensure that special needs is properly catered for and invested in. Everyone will have a life chance in our community. No one will be discriminated against. And when you go through primary and secondary, we've had the first per capita cuts since the 1980s. We'll reverse that with investing. But also, when those kids that do everything asked of them, they stay on, they get their A-levels, they want to go into trade, they go into university, higher education or FE, we're going to make sure they don't come out of it with a debt. That's why we're going to scrap tuition fees. I'm drinking a lot because I've been talking a lot, but also maybe a few too many pints of Guinness after the Bill Drew yesterday. That was fine. We were robbed. Anyway.